Hi everyone, and welcome back to Algebra 2. I'm Mrs. Stillwell and I'll be covering a lesson for today. Please remember the rules of note-taking. If you see it on your screen, you should be writing it in your notes. Some of you printed the notes out ahead of time, which will allow you to just watch and work through the examples and U-tries. Feel free to add things in your own words so they're easier to study later on. Don't forget to hit pause and replay as often as you need to. This is especially true during the examples and the U-try problems. You will need to take good notes to study for from this year and as a review when you take pre-calculus next year. Okay, here we go. Today we will be tackling Chapter 5, Rational Exponents and Radical Functions. We're going to cover just a little bit of Section 1, the nth roots and rational exponents. And our learning target today is 5A. I can simplify and perform operations with radical expressions. Now we're just going to be taking baby steps into the wonderful world of rational exponents. As a reminder, the word rational simply means that it can be written as a fraction. So these are exponents or powers that can be written as a fraction. Here is how we say these things correctly. Nth roots. If it has no number in the radical sign right there in that little hook area, it's a square root. The number is actually a 2. You just don't have to write it. If there is a 3 there, it is called a cube root. If there is a 4 there, it's called a fourth root. A 5 there, it's called a fifth root, and so on. When we don't know what the root is, we call it an nth root. That means that we don't know what that number is. The other thing that I do want to remind you is the numbers out here indicate how many at a time you have to take out of the radical sign when you're simplifying them. So a square root, you have to take numbers out 2 at a time. So you'd have to have 2 3s in here, 2 5s in here. A cube root means you have to take out 3 at a time. So a cube root would be 3 times 3 times 3. You've got 3 sets of them, you can take them out, or 4 times 4 times 4, or 5 times 5 times 5, etc. Again, you've had that before, I just wanted to remind you. Okay, here's the big point for today. Radicals and rational exponents. You are used to seeing it like this, with the root in here and the power up here. This is how we write the exact same thing as a rational exponent. It's the power over the root. Power over root, power over root. The root comes from here, the power comes from here. Please notice the power is always on top, the root is always on the bottom. So for example, the cube root of x to the 5th power is 5 over 3. X to the 5 over 3, power over root. 1/4 power. The power is 1, the root is 4. Now you'll notice that this doesn't have a root in it. Remember, that's always a 2. So power is 7, root is 2, power over root. And again, we have power over root. So here's the power and here's the root. If you would like to write this 1, you can. You don't have to. If you would like to write a 2 in here, you can. But again, you don't have to. Reminder, you must simplify all radicals if possible. I talked about that a little bit earlier. For example, the cube root of 16. 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Again, we've done that before. And this cube root means I have to take out those 2's 3 at a time. So I pull out 1 set of 2's. And there's 1 2 that's trapped inside there because it does not have enough partners to get pulled out. Again, just a review, but you do need to remember to reduce or simplify radicals if you can. Solving these things on a calculator. Some of you have a calculator that has a button that looks like this. Some of you have a calculator that has a button that looks like that. And some of you have a calculator that has a button that looks like this. This is the kind that I have, which I'm going to be showing you in a minute. Here, you would type in the number that's on the inside, push this button, and then type in the number here. here, type in this number, push the button, and then type in this number. Please remember, if the power is a fraction, like the ones that we're dealing with, you have to keep the powers in parentheses. Again, you must keep the power in parentheses, and I'll show you what that looks like on my calculator. So let's say, for example, that we would like to find out what the cube root, sorry about that, I guess I should write that down so you can see it. Let's say I would like to find the cube root of 29. Well, that is 29 to the power of 1 and the root of 3. Power of 1 and the root of 3. So putting it on my calculator, I have 29, and then here, oops, sorry, here is my caret button. So pushing that gives us a screen that looks like that. Then I have to put my parentheses, and I have 1 divided by 3 and closing the parentheses. And there's my answer, 3.07. And I'm going to write down that is approximately 3.07. Again, because I don't know what they need me to round to, we're going to be rounding to the nearest hundredths place. Okay, examples. Here we go. I will do one for you. The first thing I'm going to do is turn this into something I know how to work with. I am not allowed to use a calculator, so I am going to change this into the root goes here and the power goes there. So what I have is the cube root of negative 27 breaks down to negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. And this says I have 2 sets of them, so I'm going to write it twice. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. This cube root says that I have to pull them out 3 at a time, so I have 1 set of negative 3's to pull out, and I have a second set of negative 3's to pull out, which means I pulled out 2 sets of negative 3's. Now notice that there's nothing left inside here, which means that radical just collapses. There's no need for it anymore. And negative 3 to the second power is 9. Now, I have absolutely no problem with you checking that work on your, or excuse me, checking your answer on your calculator to make sure that you got it correct. However, the point here is to be able to do these with no calculator. Okay, let's do a second one. We've got 16 to the 1/4 power. Again, turning that into something I know how to do. I have 16 to the 1st power, and I've got the 4th root. Well, that means I only have 1/16, but I can factor that to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And there happen to be 4 of them, so I can pull them all out of here. And I end up with a 2. Notice there's nothing left inside of the radical, so there's nothing else that I can do. Okay, what I would like you to do, please, right now is try C. Do it on your own. Hit pause on the recording and try it on by yourself. Once you're finished, come back and check your work. Okay, welcome back. Let's see what we have here. We have 81 to the 3rd power and a root of 2. Now, I do want to remind you, in case you had forgotten from before, this negative power right here means that gets pushed to the bottom. Very simple to do that. Just don't forget, when you have a negative power, it pushes the answer to the bottom. So what I now have is 1 over the square root of 3 sets of 81s. Well, there's 1 set of 81s. And there's a second set of 81s. And there's a third set of 81s. And as we know, we pulled them out 2 at a time, so I can pull out 1 set of 9s, and a second set of 9s, and a third set of 9s. So I have 1 in the top, Again, please remember that 1 is because it's a negative. Negatives always push things to the bottom of a fraction. And I have 9 to the 3rd power. And if I want to multiply that out, this will be 81. That's 9 times 9 times 1 more 9. And when we do that, we get 729. And there is our fraction. Okay, hopefully you did that correctly. If not, please go back and re-watch this portion of the video to make sure that you understand it okay. Okay, the other things that we need to do is to be able to change these from radicals into exponentials or back. We already did a couple of examples, so I will do this first one for you. That is 4 to a power of 1 and a root of 5. And I'm done. There's no solving here like there was earlier. There was no evaluating. There's simply changing this. Okay, next one, I've got a negative power, so I know it's going to push this thing to the bottom. And I have the square root of 3 to the 1st power. Again, you don't have to put the 2 here, and you don't have to put the 1 there, but you can do both of them if you would like to. Okay, as always, please pause and do the you try problem. Come on back when you are satisfied that you understand how to do it. Okay, welcome back. Let us get this rolling. We have x, and that is a power of 2, and that is a root of 3. And I would like you to take a look at that and tell me why that's wrong. Hopefully you got that answer correct. Because it's pushed underneath, we know that that makes this a negative 2 over 3. So we have power of 1 root of 5, power of negative 1 root of 2, and power of, again, negative 2 and a root of 3. Okay, the next thing that we're going to be tackling, we're almost done, is working on evaluating with a calculator to 2 decimal places. Now again, this is just putting your work into your calculator to make sure that you can do it. So again, we have 9,384 to a power of 1 and a root of 5. Please remember, on most of your calculators, you're going to need to write it like that. Otherwise, the power doesn't stay together. So again, hopefully my calculator is showing up okay. We have 9,384, and then I'm going to use, again, this button, to the, and then in parentheses, 1 divided by 5. Close those parentheses and get our answer. And again, we're going to be rounding to the nearest hundredth place. So the nearest hundredth place would be right here. So that's going to be 6.3. Approximately 6.3. Oops. My bad. 6.23. There we go. Okay, please hit pause, and I would like you to do the second one. Make sure that you can push the buttons on your calculator. And welcome back. Let's get those buttons pushed. Again, as a reminder, that's 20, and you have to keep that negative 7 over 6 in parentheses in order for those powers to work. So we have 20. And again, mine is the little tent-looking button. It's called a caret. And then parentheses, negative 7 divided by 6. Close the parentheses. And we've got 0.030. So we've got 2 decimal places is 0.03. And we have our approximate answer. Okay, hopefully you got that right. If not, practice. If you have a calculator and you're not sure how to work it, please make sure that you ask your teacher about that in class. Okay, last but not least, we're actually going to put these into action, which is the whole point of this thing, and that's to solve something. Now, the nice thing is that it's solving exactly the same way you've already learned how to solve it. It's just that you're going to have a root that's different maybe than what you're used to. So, first thing we're going to do here is divide by 20. And that will give me x to the 5th is equal to 5. Okay, so far so good. Now we have to get rid of a fifth power, and the way we get rid of a fifth power is with a fifth root. And if I take the fifth root of the left, I have to take the fifth root of the right. And of course those cancel, and I'm going to end up with x is equal to the fifth root of 5. Now 5 does not factor, it is a prime number, which means that I'm going to have to type this into my calculator, which means I'm going to have to change it back. So that's 5 to the power of 1 divided by 5. Remember, a power of 1, a root of 5, power over root. And I am going to type that into my calculator. This time I am not going to use the screen to show you, but I will before I hit solve or enter. So that is what it would look like, 5 to the 1/5 power. And that gives us 1.38 if we round to the nearest hundredth, which is what we're asking you to do, round to the nearest decimal place. Okay, last problem. Please go ahead and hit pause, and do problem B, the last problem. That's a U try, and come on back when you are finished with that. Okay, welcome back. Please notice the cube is already by itself, so the very first thing I'm going to do is simply take the cube root of both sides, get rid of a cube power with the cube root, and I did it to the left, so I will do it to the right. These, of course, cancel, nothing new for us. But 8 does factor, and it factors to 2 times 2 times 2, which means I can pull something out. I can pull out a set of 2's. Now please notice there is nothing left inside here, which means that I just have a 2 and that radical sign collapses. Now, very simple algebra problem to solve, and I'm just going to move that to the other side. And I have an answer of 1. Okay, the last problem that I wanted to do for you was this. And the reason I'm adding this in here is because I want to make sure that you guys don't forget something. So let's say I have all right, so the first thing I'm going to do is divide by 2, not a problem. I know that's a fraction, we do not care. Now I need to get rid of a square power, so I'm going to use a square root. And those cancel. And I have x minus 1 is equal to, now this is what we've got to remember. If this is an even number, there's not one answer over here, there's 2, a positive or a negative. One of those. To get rid of the negative one, you simply add 1. And you have this. Now you could leave that as an answer, but in this particular case it says that we have to round to do 2 decimal places. So I'm going to have 1 plus or minus, and if we type in the square root of 5 divided by 2, we get 1.58. So 1 plus 1.58 is 2.58. And 1 minus 1.58 is negative 0.58. So we did in fact get our 2 answers. Please just don't forget, if this is an even power, you always have a positive or a negative over here. Okay, hopefully this made sense to you. If there's anything at all that you have any questions about, please make sure that you talk to your Algebra 2 teacher during class time. Your assignment is in Big Ideas, and it's available for you to look at now. Have a great day.